Good morning, Bitcoiners. Day 34, Citadel Summer. Daniel from the Bitcoin Citadel here with my morning musings. That's what last week my brother asked me when I was, at the family reunion. What is your YouTube channel about? Is it like macro information, technical Bitcoin stuff? I was like, no. And I was trying to describe it to him, and I was like, it's kind of just me musing about Bitcoin. So it doesn't sound very exciting when you put it that way. The name of the show is Citadel Summer. Citadel Summer. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin Citadels and where they fit in Bitcoin culture. And it goes back, the Citadel concept. I heard about it. I loved one of the first podcasts I really liked in Bitcoin was Odell's Citadel Dispatch, because I'm a bit of a tech guy, and I feel like there's a good tech edge to that podcast. He always has guests on it who are talking about the latest, dev projects and the Bitcoin network and all the stuff in Bitcoin, not the Bitcoin token, but the Bitcoin network and building out the technical infrastructure and the apps and the projects that are involved in Bitcoin. And I always like that, because when I first heard about Bitcoin on the Slashdot forums way back, I never took any action and I never took a deep dive into it. But I heard about Bitcoin early on, and I had a coworker who was mining Bitcoin on a work laptop of all things, right? He was really into technology. And he moved on from it. He was one of those guys who moved from whatever was new in tech he was really interested in. So he started to mine Bitcoin, mined a bunch of it, and then moved on. I'm like 99% sure that he doesn't have any of that Bitcoin that he mined from those days. I don't really talk to him anymore. Citadels doesn't go back to the beginning of Bitcoin, but it does go pretty far back. The Citadel concept, the meme, the myth, the legend of the Citadel goes back pretty far. 2013. The more I research the early days of Bitcoin, and for me the early days of Bitcoin are 2020, right? But the more I research the early days of Bitcoin and those first folks who were into it, and there's always waves, right? Like there's the OG Bitcoiners, all cypherpunks, basically. And they were the class of, 2009, early Bitcoiners, even before then, because Bitcoin starts before 2008 or 2009. Satoshi had was bouncing ideas back and forth with other, cypherpunks way back when. By 2013, there was, libertarians were in there, so political people had come in. You had your cypherpunks still. You had your, Slashdot type tech guys who have that kind of, cypherpunk mindset. But like my buddy, he was just really interested in novel technology. So you had a whole bunch of different people coming in at that time. And there was a post by a time traveler, right, in 2013, who described a Mandibles-like future, a dystopian future where Bitcoin was super valuable and Bitcoiners formed communities, citadels, to protect themselves from the zombie horde, right, from the people who wanted their Bitcoin. And I think that, one of the things is about the realm we live in is that, how do I want to say this? It's interesting because when things come into the field, That's why, Bitcoin in many ways has been memed and shitposted into existence. There's no way around it. The Satoshi's idea and the math and the Bitcoin token and the Bitcoin network are awesome accomplishments technologically. I mean, solving the double spend problem and the Byzantine generals problem. These are real, you know, uh, technological, mathematical accomplishments. But that's not what Bitcoin is, right? It is technologically what Bitcoin is, but Bitcoin was shit posted into existence, really. A small group of people memed it to life. And here we are now, as I'm speaking in July of 2025, Bitcoin stands at about almost $120,000. We're chopping sideways at this point, right? And a lot of folks like me think that the Bitcoin bull run hasn't even started yet. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But Bitcoin is, 2% of the global economy right now is in Bitcoin. 2% of the money that's in assets. That's crazy. That's ridiculous. The growth of Bitcoin, the way that it's taken over the psychology of people is quite amazing. And, the reason is because this is the end of the era. This is the information age. The nation state is falling apart. The central banks that were created during the industrial age, that confluence of printing presses and gunpowder, right? And other technologies, the steam engine, the things that created the industrial age also gave rise to these huge central banks, and all the gold was concentrated, and the wars we fought in the industrial age, ironically, were around these central banks with the centralized, concentrated, all of the gold, this ideal money that we had then, this most valuable of monetary assets, and they layered fiat on top of that, the marriage of that centralized gold and the mega politics of the industrial age led to this fiat world that we've been, suffering through for more than 100 years, right? Well, now with the dawn of the information age, and really we're at almost at the full flower of the information age now with AI and Bitcoin. The nation states that were a product of that industrial age are falling apart. I was talking to someone about it the other day, and they're like, "Oh, the nation states aren't going anywhere, Dan." And we still have the Catholic Church here, right? We still have, they're still in England. They still have knights in England, right? Those are artifacts of the feudal age, right? The whole industrial age has happened, and there are still artifacts, powerful artifacts. The Catholic Church is not, still has a lot of power. They're not gone, right? But they're no longer central. They're no longer central. And to the extent that they're still relevant at all, it's because they've been able to adapt to the industrial age and then to the information age. And if you look at it, they didn't go quietly into that dark night when the feudal age tailed off, right? They created, a secret society like the Jesuits, whose whole purpose was to try to fight against the rising tide of the industrial age and the new mega political situation. And it's the same way now. It's the same way now. The powers that be now, the nation states, for lack of a better term, and to simplify things somewhat, are fighting the same rear guard battle, right? And they're inevitably going to lose. In some ways it was over when Martin Luther, on November 1st, put his theses, nailed them to the door of that church, right? Satoshi did the same thing in 2008 on the same day, right? And the door of the church that he nailed them to was the internet. He posted them online in the white paper. And now we're well, what are we, 17 years in, whatever it is, right? And here we go, we're full swing. But that doesn't mean that, the powers that be are going to give up. Satoshi posted the white paper. That's going to separate the money from the state, just like when Luther posted his theses. That was to separate church and state. So the nation state, I'm sure there's going to be nation states moving forward, but they're just not going to be central. They're not going to be central like they are now. This whole world revolves around nation states. And I'm not sure what it's going to look like. I think a nation state like El Salvador is one of the models that we're going to have, right? Well, it's almost more like a city state, a Bitcoin nation state, right? I think the United States of Bitcoin is going to play a big role. That's where the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, which were, they were an extension, an amplification of the documents like the Magna Carta that came from England, right? The great empire before the United States, from the early industrial age, right? The United States was, in some ways, the first empire of the information age. And I think I love Balaji's model, where the Great Britain was 10x Greek and Roman civilization, and the U.S. is 10x England, and the United States of Bitcoin will be 10x America, right? So that we're moving in that direction, and the turbulent period is what is in front of us. We already see the first turbulence. It's obvious. That's why people are into Bitcoin. They can smell that smell before the big storm, the rain. You can see the leaves blowing in the wind, right? If you have your eyes open, if you're paying attention. And there's going to be some turbulence, just like there was when the feudal age ended, and the whole system changed. It's happening right now too, and that's where the Bitcoin Citadel comes from. It's a throwback to those citadels that were created in that time frame, and it was a time frame when we moved from one mega political situation that was pretty stable to another mega political situation. And I'm getting that term from the sovereign individual. And I think in many ways the sovereign individual was prescient, and one of the main tenets of the sovereign individual is that this is the time when the nation state loses power and becomes a secondary actor. The great book, you got to read it. It's not about, it's before Bitcoin, but it's a really good book. I think it's one of those books that Bitcoiners should definitely read. So the Citadel, this meme, this myth become reality. And that's kind of, I call this Citadel Summer for two reasons. One is our new company is called Bitcoin Citadel, and it's all about helping people secure their Bitcoin and get through this turbulent period. That's really, I have me and my 6 business partners, that's our whole purpose, to help plebs and small business people, mostly the group we want to work with, get through this period. Hold on to your Bitcoin, And one of the things that, is really important in this period is forming communities for, mutual self-protection, mutual protection, right? And, that's where the concept of the Citadel comes from, banding together, getting your security in line, and moving forward like that. And I think one of the things I want to do, this is why I call the Citadel Summer, is I'm getting close to retirement from my job. I'm not going to retire from work, but I'm going to retire from working for somebody else. That's my goal anyway. And I want to travel in the wintertime, because where I live in the Northeast United States, I love it, especially, well, this morning's not so great. It's actually going to be a great day, but it's, this is an awesome spot to live, but not in the wintertime for me anymore. I want to be closer to the equator in the wintertime, where it's warm. And I think what I'm going to do is to travel in the winter, maybe 2 or 3 months to begin with, after retirement. And one of the things I want to do is visit Bitcoin Citadels, people who've already are already starting to live the dream, right? To get them set up. And I'm not sure I'll be interested to see how many Citadels really are this super paranoid prepper mandibles people. And I think that there's a certain flavor of that in the Citadel movement. And how many fall more on the side of, a permaculture type arrangement, right? Where you're trying to, harness your own energy, right? Grow your own food, set up your security, but in a small scale, kind of homey, hippie, if you will, way, right? I have a fantasy of being like a cattle lord like the old days, right? Because, keeping access to high quality food is going to be a challenge, I think, for in some parts of the world, who knows, maybe all the world. But those kinds of Citadels, I want to see how people do it. There's already, Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador. I've already been there. There's a great community in Costa Rica, and there's communities in Indonesia that I'm aware of, and places all over the place. You know that I say that, ranchers are natural Bitcoiners, and the Amish are natural Bitcoiners. And what I want to do is investigate some of that, and maybe if I can, if I get my video skills together, which are very rudimentary still, I will admit that. I have a fantasy of doing an Anthony Bourdain style show about Bitcoin Citadels. So that's on the list. Maybe I'll be able to do that. We'll see. So this was a rambling day 34, Bitcoin Citadel. I like to say at this time, at the end of my video, like, subscribe, ring the notification bell. Look in the description and you can find a link if you want to schedule some time with me, a free value for value, 30-minute conversation. Do it if you want. If you've been watching the videos, sign up. I have a Calendly link in there, and people have been just signing up. Fortunately, I look at that calendar occasionally. I would have missed some calls. So give me a shout if you want. Sign up for a 30-minute call, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Tomorrow is Simulation Sunday, and I think it's going to be a banger tomorrow. So tune in. Talk to you then. Peace.